Hello there. And that was I did The Omen, which was a classic, starring Teddy Peck and Lee Remitt. Why not the next one? That being Omen 2, Damien. Now this one has to be one of my favourites for a number of reasons. You could say, yeah, it's similar to the first one, but it's actually one of the most finest ones. A bit like Halloween 2 was the most violent out of the Halloween films. You could say this was the most violent out of the Omen films. Now, Talented Omen's 3 had its moments, but I reckon this was the most violent out of them all. It starts off with a bit of the 70s type of music. If you ever remember Omens 2, how it opens up, it definitely feels like a 70s film. You know, the 70s type of music, the same style, what's similar to the original. And you've got Boomer Aiken. Now, this is a bit I forgot to say in the first review, in the original Omen. Boomer Aiken was a guy that did Teddy Peck, these daggers, and there was the only thing that could kill Damien. You see where, you know, David Warner gets his head cut off. There were the daggers, and he comes into it and he speaks to this other guy, and that's when they go into this big tube, beautiful big tube, pretty cheapy actually. And this is where you get introduced with the big black bird, that being the toe. Like I said with the review on the original Omens, the toe is considered to be the devil's bird, and the Rottweiler is considered to be the devil's dog. And before people say, oh, you're talking my dog to Satan's dog, it's a fucking film. Don't take it personal. Right? So the black bird comes in. I always love the bit of the cheapy theme every time this bird lands down. And they get a bitty good gruesome death. They get buried alive. A couple of years later, then you now got Damien as a teenager. Now I remember seeing this lad. He's been in a few things. No longer a lad. And I've got to admit, he was a good actor. The one who played Damien in this was a good actor. And I always find it cheap that every actor that played Damien always had a slight look of one another. And yeah, it's a pretty good film. It's definitely gruesome. It's sad to say it's similar to the first one, things start to happen, but this one you're going beat for beat of how many gruesome deaths people get. Like there's an iconic scene, right, where you've got the woman and she knows about Boomer Aiken, the one who got buried alive. And she gets the best death out of it all really. She gets her eyes pecked out by the toe. Eyes all bloody and messed up. Reminds me a bit of the birds actually, the way the birds are attacking her. And she's on the road. This fucking big truck comes out of nowhere and just bounces her in the fucking air and splatters her. The beating just splatters her. Then you got another death scene. The guy's on the ice and they're doing ice hockey. And he falls under ice. Now, back in the day, 1978, there was an original making of Omens 2, Damien. And it was actually a real stuntman who actually did this on his fucking shitty CDI you see nowadays. A fucking stuntman with a special rig and rope tied him in icy water. So when you see the underwater shots of the guy bobbing about underwater, that was actually a real stuntman who did that. I dilute that. Any stuntman you could put their life at risk like that, just like in a Bond film, I dilute. So again, you know what I mean? This one I would say is more of a body count film. It's definitely one of the most violent and one of the most gruesomest. I do remember another good death scene. You've got a guy, right? And he discovers the blood samples of Damien are different than the others. Do you see that idea? He's not. He was rejected, remember, from the original. And he goes on a lift, and the lift's going up, and it's going up, and it's going up, and it's falls like fucking down. You think he's going to die, the lift's going to collapse and blow up? Nope. He's on the floor, badly hurt, and this wire goes sliding fucking down, and it just completely and utterly splits him in half. Completely and utterly just slips him in half. There's bits of this where I do wonder, remember the Final Destination films? I always wonder whether they must have saw this one, because I always find it ironic, every death scene is made to look like a fucking accident. It's made to look like an accident. And in this one, the actor that played Damien discovers that he is the son of the Antichrist. You know, Like if you turn the turner off the air, you have 3 6s. And he discovers it in this, and this is where you could say he becomes evil. Because he has a stepbrother anyway, right? Sort of like his cousin, let's say. And he discovers that he's the son of Satan, you know, the son of Antichrist. It's like, you're the jackal, you're the jackal. And it honours him. He says, I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you going to come with me? Or are you not? Next thing you know, he looks at him and he completely utter cusses his fucking brain. So just the idea that Damien Thorn has powers of his own. It's definitely someone you wouldn't want to fuck with. And I just like the way the film turns. I just love the way the film turns. It's just like your everyday spoilt teenager, you know, rich family, he gets spoiled, he gets money, he gets pretty things. But as the film goes on, that's when he turns and he changes. Which kind of follows that on in Omen's V, the final confrontation. Which is, again, played by a very damn good actor to play Damien. But I'll leave that for another day. And it's not a bad film, and it's definitely, I would say, one of the most finest. You're going into this one more for the gruesome death scenes. I'm not more for doing it here. I'm not going to say it's full of blood and snot. It's too, you know, it's too tame compared to most movies, but, you know, because most of the Omen films, I say, were psychological and suspenseful. But this one, the actors that play these foster family, are they good as Teddy Peck and Lee Rennick? No. But with this one, if you're going into it more for the blood, the gore, the violence, you definitely get it in this one. You definitely get it. And again, just like the original, the guy who fosters him, who is, you know, his uncle, he finds out that he's the son of the Antichrist. And you find out the woman who's his ex-wife is only working for Satan. And she fucking stabs him. Damien walks off and you got that brilliant theme. I'm not going to do it because I won't do it justice, but if you've ever seen Omen 2, the theme tune is very 70s film. But it's definitely a good one. You know, I mean, this was one of my favourites. I think this one had a lot more going for it than the first one. But I still think the first one's a classic, but this one, it's one of my favourites. You know, there was beat for beat. I never got bored watching it, and it definitely was fight in the Omen films. It definitely was a fight one, because you're just going into it for the death scenes. And I do remember the old woman who you might remember being in Beetlejuice. There's an old woman in it who's in that, and you might remember the guy. I reviewed him. He was in Aliens, and he was also in Pumpkinheads, and he was also in House 3. He plays a bad guy in this. You do get a few people who try to help him, and you can get the idea that they work it Satan. You know, your typical Satan worshippers. Again, you know, this was definitely a good one, and it was only right when it got into the 80s, decided to do the last one, being Omen's V, the final confrontation. It's not a bad one, and you know what I mean, it's more of a body count film, and I say more of a slasher. But it definitely falls on from the utility. I'd check it out. Omen 2, 1978, Damien. It's a good one. Into then, I'll see you later.